You look down, they know you're lying. And up, they know you don't know the truth. Don't use 7 words when 4 will do. Don't shift your weight. Look always at your mark, but don't stare. Be specific, but not memorable. Be funny, but don't make him laugh. He's got to like you, then forget you the moment you've left his side. And for God's sakes, whatever you do, don't, under any circumstances, listen to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Would you like to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Speakeasy and master connector Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on this planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another spectacular episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting into the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. And today on Thrive Loud, oh boy, we've got a certified financial planner, professional and certified investment management analyst that brings a brilliant entrepreneurial perspective to his clients and community alike. He's got a book coming out next year, In the Shadow of a Black Sun, which is coming out sometime in 2023. And Thrive Loud listeners, he's coming to us from Arizona. It's a lot warmer there than it is where I'm recording this. It's just after Thanksgiving. We're going to put a nice bow on this year of 2023. We're doing some really cool things people are doing in podcasting and in life. Part of our last little series here on Thrive Loud. I bring you Brent Mekosh. Brent, how are you?
Ooh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I had the pleasure of being on your amazing program with like the second best voice I've ever heard. You have your partner, Eric. Eric, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like Barry White, like oozing through your headphones. It's amazing.
As you listen to this episode when it's produced, you'll hear Steve O'Brien, who's pretty good in his own right. I have to put him on a different pedal, but this guy wowed me when I heard his voice on the program. I'm like, man.
You feel a little bit inadequate whenever you get off the show with him because he does sound so good.
Well, but you do it. You do a killer job. You've been doing some great stuff. I want to bring our listeners up to speed. I got a chance to know you, having been a guest on your program, but you're coming to this one, and we want to introduce our listeners to you. I don't want to go all the way back to the womb, Brent. I want to learn kind of how what you've been focusing on of late has been your gig, because I imagine you've been in the business for a while. Yes.
Yeah, in terms of this end of it, on the, I guess, working with individual clients and families, it's been now about 15, almost 16 years or so. And prior to, I guess, this version of my career, I was down on Wall Street for about 10 years on the institutional side. So it's been 2 financial services in different capacities, but 2 very different experiences and 2 very different, I guess, skill sets I had to bring to the table.
Talk about them. What did you merge together?
Well, my old life, I was a specialist trader on the New York Stock Exchange, and back when 95% of the volume went down through the floor of the stock exchange. And the best way that I could describe that role was, it was basically like, going to school every day in a gym with a bunch of insane adolescents. It was totally crazy. It was fun. It was a unique culture that has probably gone forever as the markets have become far more electronic, but it was a really, really great experience. I wouldn't trade any of that for the world. And I left that in 2006 and traveled for about a year, and then decided I wanted to do something where I was working more one-on-one with individual, families and clients and things like that. And that's what got me into this side of the business.
This side of the business is an interesting one, helping to manage the different stages of people's lives. There's been in that window you've just described from, let's say from 2007 and on, it's been quite an interesting financial market over the last
You're not kidding,
years.
man. I mean, I opened my doors on, as I say, on this side of the business, but working with individual clients in October of 2007, which corresponded with the market high before we had obviously the Great Recession. So it was a heck of a way to get going, and a great learning experience. Fortunately, we did learn quite a bit, and we got through it okay. But then, fast forward, we've had COVID, we've had everything that's occurred this year. It's been an interesting time for sure.
This is something I help people understand often when it comes to investments. I worked on the street a long time ago. We briefly chatted about this, and One of my mentors gave that lovely lesson. It's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. Whenever, markets and turmoils, which is an important thing for financial planners and helping people understand how to look at the horizon of figuring out all the things you do in with your money, with your retirement, with all the plannings and stages in your life. How do you go about breaking into pieces, maybe, or better understanding or better connecting with your clients to understand what is important to them and how you can help plan effectively for them?
Yeah, you really hit on a key point, and it's not as good as it seems, or it's not as bad as it seems either. I do think that we're still kind of in this hangover from, quite frankly, the Great Recession, where the system almost broke. I mean, the financial system was in real turmoil and disarray at that point. And I think what we're experiencing now is something a little bit different. I think there's parts of the economy that for sure are broken that have not recovered. But overall, so far what we're dealing with anyway is nothing to the extent of what we saw back in 2008, 2009. And to your point, in 2021, things weren't as great as as they appeared during that period of time as well. But in terms of dealing with clients, I think that, I view money essentially as stored energy. And when you look at it that way, from a client's perspective, what they're asking for some counsel and advice on is something that they've worked for. It's stored energy from years and years and years of hard work and effort and labor, and it's there's a lot of emotion attached to it, and it makes complete sense. So you've got to, I think, when it comes to investing, you have to recognize that emotion's a part of it. You can't say be unemotional and be robotic, because that's not human beings. People just aren't wired that way. You have to recognize what some of those driving impulses are, but also try not to let that dominate what your decision making is.
Brent, there's different stages that you can come across working with someone like yourself. As some people unfortunately should be doing it from the very beginning. But unfortunately, that usually isn't the case. Usually they recognize that they need financial planning when things have gotten more complicated.
Yeah.
I love asking people that do what you do in this role. If you were to say, okay, what's the most realistic time that you would love to start working with someone if you think about the average person's life, they're single, they get married, they have children, they build a family, they, start a business, sell a business. Is there a certain aspect that you could say, this is the part that I'd love to work with them to get them on the right path earlier on? What's that space? Where does that work for you?
If you look at my book, and I'm probably where I might be slightly different from some other planners out there, is a lot of people are going after those retirement dollars. And that's definitely a big part of our business as well. But I also get really excited about, younger people that are in the accumulation stage, whether they're entrepreneurs that are building something outside of a traditional 9-to-5 job, or if they're corporate executives, or they're, like you mentioned, having a family, having different things happening in their lives. People that are in this accumulation stage, it's a great time to start working with them, because everything that happens, particularly when the markets get real volatile and crazy like they are right now, it's less scary because it's actually a huge opportunity. If you're already well into retirement, you've got what you've got to take a prudent amount of risk to hopefully make these dollars work. That's one thing. But if you can look at everything that's occurred, even in the last couple of years, and when you get these big moves in the market, it creates a ton of opportunity if your mindset is in the right place. And also if you are in the right place from a life cycle perspective as well.
In the Shadow of a Black Sun. So this is the name of your book. Tell me, first of all, what that title really means, and what kicked off the idea that said, I'm actually going to write a book and I have a story to tell.
Yeah, this is very different from my core business, although there's some lessons that are in it as well. But the genesis for the book really comes back to that year that I traveled. When I left my job on Wall Street, I literally went down the floor one day, and I had a really phenomenal rapport with my bosses. And I said, you know what? I want to take 6 months off, because I was having a reoccurring dream where I was not in New York City. I was at different places around the world. And they said, well, no, we're not going to let you do that. And I said, okay, well, I've got to do this. And they said, all right, well, if you come back to New York, let us know. And it was all done on really fantastic terms. But that last day that I went to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange was the last time I went down there as a member and as a trader. Hmm. And so the book In the Shadow of Black Sun is really, it's lessons learned and sort of a journey towards empathy, I think, in that entire year that I spent traveling, because I really had no agenda. I bought a one-way ticket to Africa and started there, and kind of stumbled back into JFK airport over a year later. And the title comes from sometimes the really beautiful things, happen in the shadows. And if you have a black sun, for example, the shadows are very bright. Those shadows are almost, it's like a negative, if you will. And so the book itself, the genesis of it was back in 2017. I have a young son, and I tell him bedtime stories every night. And I tell him different stories of sanitized versions of a lot of things that occurred to me when I was traveling for that year. And someday I wanted him to know some of the other stories that maybe he'll get something from when he's an adult. It's a book. I'm very close to my father. My father, fortunately, is still with us. It's a book I would love to have read about my father when he was in his 30s, which is the age I was at that point when I took that year off and did some traveling. So I'm really excited. It's, hopefully at some point my son will read it. I've had a number of people now that have read the draft, which is being submitted hopefully in the next couple of days or so. And I've gotten some great feedback from it. So I hope that some people find some valuable stories or maybe some lessons in that book.
Let's do this. I'm sure there are many that the reader will get. I love asking authors this question. In the writing process, sometimes there's this thing that I love to call a happy accident that happens. That's actually a gift to the author as they went through the writing process and they put the story out. Did that happen for you, Brent?
It did. I started initially, the book that I thought I wanted to write was a book about the time I spent down on Wall Street. And I got well into it. I mean, I wrote well over 100,000 words of this thing, and I submitted it to a writing coach probably now about 10 years or so ago. And I thought I had this beautiful thing that I'd put together and spent all this time on. And she called me back and said, "This isn't the book you need to write." And she goes, I want to know what happens later. What happens after you left. And at first I was a little bit annoyed because as anyone that's been on your show, and I know you've had a number of authors on the show, like writing a book's the hardest thing I've ever done by a lot. It's not even close. And to go back to the drawing board was incredibly frustrating, but what's come out of it, I think, is so much more valuable. I look at the initial, first bit of this thing that I had written, and I'm really glad it's not the book that's being published, because what's coming out now is completely different.
Yeah, it also helps to get those eyes on there, the editors, the people who know the space, and
again,
and see
unbiased person, because if I give it to my mother, she would have said, "Oh, it's wonderful." But here's somebody that said, it's fine. You're an okay writer. I read a lot, so I think that helps. But this isn't your book, and she was right.
Used to help. I do this exercise with top leaders, and there's an exercise that we would do, and one of the things I would tell people to do is to go find some people you've worked with or people in your life that know you well, but that are not family and wife. Because if you hand it to them, they're going to either give you the best positive version of it or the worst scenario case.
Very true.
It, If you gave it to your mom would be like, he never calls, doesn't come to visit enough, all that stuff. All right. So not only have you made a shift in your career and focused on a different aspect of financial services and have tapped into a really good story that's probably going to help a lot of people and come up with the good lessons, but you've also spun into this world. And that is that you have a podcast program. Share with the listeners, first of all, what the program's about and why you kicked this thing off.
I love podcasting as a medium. I'm a huge consumer of podcasts, so I think that's a part of it for sure. And what I wanted to do is, again, I love the financial world, and I can get kind of geek out with all the stuff and everything as well. But honestly, if I hear another podcast about growth versus value or saving for retirement, there's a time and a place for those. And I think they're really valuable for the people that want to listen to that. But I'm more interested in what money can do. And what's we live on an economic planet. So the answer is it pretty much is embedded in every single aspect of our lives. But I wanted to talk to different people in different fields that I found like the conversations were interesting. And they might have been people that have nothing to do with what my day-to-day world looks like. Because, if I can increase my own understanding about different things, hopefully bring the listener along with me. I think anytime you're increasing your understanding of the world, hopefully that's going to help you when it comes to multiple decisions, whether it's relationship decisions, financial decisions, that type of thing. So it's a Smart Money Simplified podcast, but what, we covered a lot of other stuff aside from anything financial. I mean, we've had guests as diverse as a cop that does Skid Row in LA that talked about what the drug situation, the homeless situation is looking like in LA. We've had people that have talked about artificial intelligence. We've had people in the steel business. We've had a variety of people in the marketing world, obviously. And it's just been really, really fun to tap into other people's knowledge base and just have a conversation with them.
One of the things that just happened this past month this episode's coming out in December, but it happened in November of 2022, was a very confusing, still confusing, scenario that happened in the financial markets around a market that we don't even know if it's really a market or not, and that is in the crypto space.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just recorded a podcast on that. Actually, it's not out yet, but.
Well, so here's a good question, because to somebody that is trying to help people balance out, there's all different types of investment risk, things you can invest on: real estate, alternative investments, traditional stocks, bonds, all that stuff. And everyone's trying to figure out whether to delve into new things, because they're, some of these things take off and they turn out to be great. And many times, and by the way, they still very, very much might go in the direction where things are. When there's such a void of understanding and your clients are asking questions, how do you help provide them at least the comfort and the guidance when you have stuff like this, where there is so much uncertainty? How do you help them gain a better perspective on everything that's going on as it relates to them, to something when no one knows the answers? We who would have ever known, all the stuff that had happened this past month with crypto and FTX and all the craziness that happened there? No one would know. And let alone most people don't even know what's going in the markets, and it's very suspect. Right. How do you guide your clients on stuff like that?
Well, I think you got to educate yourself on it. And so the crypto space to me is very interesting. And, full disclosure, we don't play in that world. My broker dealer, Raymond James, has been really conservative when it comes to anything crypto, but it's part of my job to understand what it is. And so when I've gotten questions about crypto and the blockchain that all this stuff is riding on over the last few years, some of them were questions a year or two ago saying, oh my gosh, Bitcoin's at 66,000. How come we're not investing in this? And some of them are now saying, oh my gosh, is it going to zero? And my answer, at least initially, and I think it's a good analogy for almost any new technology, which we're going to continue to get at an exponential rate. Had you and I sat down in the end of the 1990s, for example, and you said, man, I don't know this internet thing. What do you think? And the dot-com stocks are all going crazy. Is this a big deal or not? And the answer is yes, it absolutely is. I mean, the internet has changed my life and the way I've conducted business in a more dramatic fashion in the last 20, 25 years than I ever would have imagined. But most of those first mover companies were lousy investments. And so not knowing which way the crypto space was going to go, I truly believe that blockchain, which basically it's just a ledger, blockchain is going to radically change the way every single company, I'm confident saying that, does business over the next, if it takes 10 years, it's going to be a long time. But in terms of the different tokens that you're using to participate in this or to get access to these different networks, which ones are going to last? And I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I think when it comes to crypto and specifically blockchain, there's a there, and it's going to be something really dramatic that I hope for the good will dramatically change the way business is conducted. But where it's still Wild West phase. Now, I think what will come out of this, you're going to see some regulation come out of this. You're going to see hopefully some guardrails that are put in place, because this is a bad one, but it was pretty classic. What Sam Bankman-Fried did was nothing unusual. He stole money. He had client money on deposit. He stole it. It's happened in the banking world. It's happened in, you name it. In pretty much any emerging business, there's been bad players that have come in and essentially stolen investors' money, and that's exactly what he did, in my take. So I think that's, but obviously crypto, you get precious metals, you get all these different questions that fall outside of our core business, but it's all really interesting stuff. And it's easy for me to have these discussions because there are some I can't give advice on one way or another. Crypto is an example of that, but it's all really fun stuff. And if you want to take the time to sort of geek out on it and drill into it with clients, I'll do that all day long. I think it's awesome.
It's actually a fun thing to discuss because the name itself is interesting. And talking about changing all the different businesses. When I heard about the blockchain the first time, and I had somebody come on the show to explain to me how the blockchain worked in the ledger when it first was, everyone was talking about it. And I just kept thinking of all of the businesses that would literally change overnight with the flip of the switch. If you're a homeowner, title insurance was my favorite one, right? Because
Absolutely. What do you need a title company for?
Yeah, what do I need a title company that, by the way, has been making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars and billions of dollars across all the different title companies over the year? Technically, that goes away, or it's just a much more secure service online that you're now paying for, versus actually needing to have a document. And all of these things that show that record and how they can make sure it's not hackable and all that stuff is where there was a little bit of a branding issue, because the word crypto obviously goes from one end of it versus blockchain, which is the other. And when you think about all these things, it's like, hiding things, secure things, different things, and now it all of a sudden becomes an exchangeable currency. It always goes the wrong way initially. To your point, that's what happened with the internet right away. With think about all the search engine sites, or the even go back to the financial E-Trade services, Ameritrade, and all that, right? Because they were changing the way we're going to do transactions online. Who needs brokers? Who needs brokerage houses? And eventually, rules, regulation, things came in, and it just became a better way to do business with a little bit more rules around it. I think that's where we'll head in some form or fashion. I think.
Computer companies. How many computer companies went bust? If you go back and you look at what what the early days of the I guess purchasable mass market computers, if you can even call them that, in the 70s, I mean, these companies are all gone.
Yeah.
So they're first mover companies that any new business absolutely needs, that pave the way for established players to come in, or people figure out what worked and what didn't. And I do think in terms of with the FTX thing and many other the stories around crypto right now, we're finding out what doesn't work, and people are going to learn lessons from that.
Let's do the admin part of the show, and then we'll head down Fun Street. Brent, share with the listeners all the places people can learn about you, where they can get the book and all that stuff when it comes out, all this stuff, places that they can go to. We'll put it in the show notes, but it gets more engagement when they hear it from you.
Absolutely. So our website is mpadvisorsaz.com or smartmoneysimplified.com. And that'll just take you to our website. And that's got all of our contact information, everything else. If you search, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you just search Brent, B-R-E-N-T, Mekosh, M-E-K-O-S-H on LinkedIn, I love to connect with you. I put quite a bit of content up between the podcasts. We shoot a weekly, video blog, just 5-10 minutes about what's going on in the markets. YouTube channel, Smart Money Simplified as well. If you search that on YouTube, our YouTube channel is up also, in the Smart Money Simplified podcast as well. Those are all great ways to find us.
Brent is ready to go down Fun Street. I know he is.
All right, let's do it, man.
He was born this way. Listeners know we've been doing this for a while. Fun Street started off initially with asking what someone's favorite movie is, which I will ask him because this one's interesting. But we're going to throw a couple of new curveballs to our normal questions here, just because Brent is that flexible and he can handle all this. Okay, Brent. First of all, share with the listeners what you shared with me were two of your all-time favorite movies, and these are classics. You went like old school. Do you remember what you gave?
Well, Gone with the Wind's probably my favorite.
Okay.
By far. And I just think that I think it's an awesome story. And I mean, and you look at, you both can't stand, but you love Scarlett. You can't stand Rhett, but you also kind of love him. And I just think that those two characters, perhaps they're the greatest characters almost in any book or movie in my mind. That was one for sure. And there's so many other good movies. I'm trying to think of the second one. Going with the Wind's always my go-to.
It's very,
classic.
Very fitting as this is coming around the holiday time for around the Christmas.
Oh, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
Yeah,
this is where you and I saw, like, that's one of my top five.
Yes.
That it's impossible for me when he runs through when he comes back after, no spoiler alerts, everyone's seen it. It's on every year.
Yeah, it's a million times.
When Jimmy Stewart is running through the town and he shouts, "Hello, old building and loan." And, I'm already waterfalls at this point. I'm like, God damn, why does this happy movie make me cry every single time? So the appreciation.
It hits you where it's the true story that every single person, the impacts that people have made, it could be in passing. I mean, I think there's people that I've met one or two times, but for some reason the interaction left a mark, and it's impossible to calculate what an impact people make on a day-to-day basis, both good and bad. And I think that movie is awesome at illustrating that. It's I will only let myself watch it during the month of December, but I will probably watch it 10 times next month. I absolutely love it.
I know that they air it on, I think it's NBC who owns it or something like that, and they air it once a year, but then you can still get it.
I own it, so it's on. Yeah,
it's on somewhere else. Mm-hmm. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a kind of a variation. It's not really a speed round. I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of things. I want to see how you play with this. I'm gonna start off here with something you've recently tried that you'd recommend others to try. Something new that you've played in. It could be anything. It could be something you ate. It could be something you an activity you did, or something you looked at, or movie you watched. I don't know. Something you've recently tried that you'd recommend others to try.
I'd recommend others try. That's really tough, actually. Wow, I got to think about it. You definitely caught me off guard with that one. I think I'm pretty up for any kind of food, so it wouldn't be that, movies, books, that type of thing. I read a lot of books. There's nothing crazy or unique there. I did. I was recently asked. This was just a lot of fun. A buddy of mine that was in a Porsche club, and we did track day in his 911 Turbo, which was pretty awesome. And I would just say, and you think if you think you can drive, and I had obviously a train guy next to me, and I was driving this, not my 911 Turbo. I'm surprised he let me drive it, but you realize you don't know how to drive because then you switch seats. And the guy that is in the passenger seat with you shows you what a vehicle like that can really do. And that was actually pretty fun. That was
so
cool.
it's on like a track and you're with a professional driver. Is that how that works?
Yeah. And there's other, in this particular club, there's, everybody had their cars out there and they're actually racing, they're on a closed track and they're racing and it's nerve wracking because first of all, you're going a lot faster than even if you're an aggressive driver than you would ever consider. And you don't know what the capabilities of the car are. And there's other people blasting by you. And that was a lot of fun. That was pretty cool.
Okay. Something that you've wanted to try that you have yet to do so that you really want to do, some activity or something that's on your list that's like a bucket list type thing that it's been on your mind and you want to engage in.
That's another tough one because I've done it. Like I tend to do a lot of the stuff that I want to do that I haven't engaged. Well, publishing a book. How about that? We're going to do that pretty soon. That's been my number one bucket list thing to do, and it's going to happen real soon, but it hasn't happened yet. So,
gotcha. Of late, do you like music, Brent?
I love music.
Okay. Of late, a song that's kind of been in your head or one that you've been listening to, maybe one that pumps you up.
I'll tell you what, I saw Saturday night, and for, I guess, time stamping, it's Monday right now. I saw Saturday night. Aerosmith is in residence in Las Vegas. And I went with a buddy of mine. We were front row tickets to the show. And I got to tell you, man, Steven Tyler, he's the guy's 74 years old. Joe Perry's 72. They absolutely, completely crushed it. I mean, they crushed it. And I always liked Aerosmith. And in the week or two leading up to it, I was listening to a lot more Aerosmith than I have in a long period of time. But I'll be listening to a lot more of them because these guys, you could tell they're passionate about the music still. You can tell they really are passionate about the fans. I mean, I like going to live shows, and there's a few people that, particularly some of the older acts, they're phoning in, they're collecting their paycheck, and they're pretty much done. That is not these guys. They killed it. They were absolutely amazing.
It's a walking case that heroin actually can be good for you. Okay.
Well, how these guys are how they still have the energy to do what they're doing, and because they've had a pretty checkered past. The other guy I saw this year, who's my favorite guitarist by far, is Jack White. And I saw him in Phoenix live. Awesome. And he's incredible, man. I mean, that is a guy that just so many different sounds. You go from White Stripes to Raconteurs to Dead Weather to solo stuff. He can do it all. And another guy I think that really loves and respects his fans, which I appreciate that as a customer and paying fan at this point.
Love it. A favorite food that's not a dessert.
Favorite food that's not a dessert. Any shellfish. Shellfish. So I grew up in New Jersey. As a family, we always would have like the paper, the newspaper spread out on the table. We'd have the Blue Point crabs that you got Chesapeake Bay and that type of thing. And that I love any kind of shellfish. So whether it's scallops or lobster.
Yeah, I was going to say the scallops
mussels
in the Jersey Shore are just off the charts. Like right by Long Beach Island is like some of the best during the summer. That's like
absolutely
fine.
Yeah.
Favorite dessert.
Favorite dessert would be coconut cream pie.
Arizona. Or East Coast, New Jersey.
Arizona now because I'm living here, and but I do love. Put it this way, I would not move back to New York now. I'm very happy being in Arizona, but as we talked about, I was back in New York City a couple of weeks ago, and hadn't been there for a little bit because COVID stuff and everything derailed some of my normal travel back there. But there is something about the energy and the excitement of the East Coast, which is very real. I mean, you leave New York City and it's you're charged up, you're pumped up. Things are moving a lot faster than they are in Arizona, and Arizona's a great place to live and raise a family, and for sure run a business. A lot more business friendly than New York, but I do love getting back to the East Coast as well.
An activity you wish you did more of?
Play the guitar.
An activity you wish you did less of?
Staying up too late. I get a second wind about 9:00 at night, and I tend to, you get down the YouTube rabbit hole where you put on a movie or you pick up a book, or in my case, I might pick up a guitar. Next thing you know, it's 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's a consistent thing that I'm trying to get myself on a more normal schedule.
If I could snap my fingers, Brent Mekosh, and you could be anywhere in the world, where are you?
I am in the Okavango Delta in Botswana.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is specific. Obviously, it sounds like you've been, because obviously you were there from that Africa trip. Was that on that trip?
Yeah, I've been in Africa half a dozen times, but I spent about 3 months in sub-Saharan Africa during that year that I was traveling. And Botswana is just such a special place because it's kind of what you envision when you think of Africa from, 40, 50 years ago. There's only a couple million people. It's about the size of Texas. Half the continent's elephant, I think, are in Botswana. And the Delta specifically is just a really, really unique place.
Brent, I forgot to hit this to you before, so I'll bring it up now. We all are thriving. You've been thriving throughout your whole career, ups and downs, lots of good stuff, and building a great business and podcasts, books, and authoring, which means on most days you're kicking on all cylinders. But sometimes we're not on our A game and we're a little off of it. Brent, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or maybe which individual do you seek out to get back on the thriving track?
If it's just kind of some maintenance stuff, I try to, and in fact, I record, I basically check it in my planner if I do it, and I try to do it every single day. Is I take some time and I run through about 5 things I'm grateful for, and try to spend a minute on each thing and really focus on it. And what's amazing about that is if you are annoyed about something, ticked off about something, if you're not in the best state, and you actually start to really think about it, you're like, wow, I've got abundant flowing water 10 feet away from me where, there's probably 2 billion people that don't have that on the planet. And you can get really grateful really quickly if you look at just all the amazing stuff that's around you. And that's a real quick way to change your mood. Otherwise, I'm very fortunate in the sense that, supportive family. I'll definitely talk to my wife if I need a little boost, and I'll go to my mother and father independently for different things. Your mother, if you want the nurturing and somebody just to listen and not give you advice. Your dad, if you want maybe a kick in the butt a little bit to get moving and stop whining. But those are mostly what I will do for sure.
Brent, truly a pleasure to have you on Thrive Loud. Thanks for coming on the program, man. Great to have you here.
Lou, I really appreciate this. This is a great conversation. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.